Hey everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of GenAI Vlog. Today we're going to be talking about an interesting template that allows you to make quick API call to the ChatGPT-4o model. And the 4o is referring to Omni, and that's the latest model that OpenAI released. Here, first thing you want to do is to install the OpenAI library. Once that's done, you want to include your API key. The way I manage my API key is to use the Google Secrets on the left-hand side. This allows me to access the API key every time I use the Colab. So you can set up the client just like that, and then you can make an API call by run the client chat completion create function. And then you want to start a conversation by simply saying you are a helpful assistant, and then maybe the user says hello. So that all sounds good. How do you go from here, right? The trick is to implement a functionality to make sure that this list of dictionary objects gets longer and longer every time there's a conversation continues. So what that means is in the question and answer that you are interacting with this API call, you want to somehow append that into this list. So with that being said, this is how I prefer to do it. You create a class object called chatbot, and you want to init a client as well as the history. Client is the OpenAI client with the correct API key, and the history is initiated with a list of dictionary object. And the dictionary object simply starts a conversation by saying you are a helpful assistant. Now, here's the thing. When you make this API call, a user is going to enter a prompt. You want to first append that prompt inside of a dictionary object to this list. So dot history is currently this list of dictionary. And when you append this, it's going to add this dictionary object to the original history. And then you send the entire history into these messages as an input variable when you are making that client chat completion create function API call. So once you make that API call, you get your completion results back, and then you retrieve the response. And then don't forget to append the response back to the history as another new dictionary object here as a response from the assistant role. So that being said, you can then return the response, and then that completes this function. So to make things easier, you want to also implement a getHistory method to allow you to retrieve the entire history. So with that being said, let's check a couple of use cases. For example, the initiator bot, and that's going to be the class object. And then you're going to send in a question. What is the weather like today? You print the response and it says, hey, I'm unable to provide real-time information, including current weather updates, things like that. And then you can get a history. So that's interesting, but how do we identify the long-term conversation, right? So let's go down. There's an interesting question here that you can say, write a Python function to find a Fibonacci number. And then it's going to give you an answer, right? You can say, hey, here's a Python script called Fibonacci, and there's a function. And then that's how you run sample usage, things like that. And then it's going to try to explain it. Now, if you're not satisfied with this, you can then say, hey, I want to add some type hints to the previous function. Now, notice that in this prompt, I did not mention this function at all. I didn't say that it's a Fibonacci function or that it's a whatever function, right? All I said was to add type hints to the previous function. And since I have the history in the memory, and I'm sending the entire history into that API call, it's able to take the previous function, which is the exact same Fibonacci Python function, and add the type hints to the function. So this function, same as the structure of this function above, except that in the new function, it added the type hints, and everything else is exactly the same. And then you can always print out the history by using pprint, or also known as pretty print, and it will allow you to look at the entire conversation. So with that being said, hopefully you like today's video. Hopefully this class object can come in handy, and you can simply take it and use it at the tip of your finger. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like.